All right. So our speaker today is well known to the community, Chuck Reddy. For those of you who don't know, he's a retired mechanical engineer who spent most of his career in the oil and gas industry. He dabbled in falconry during the 60s, training some red-tailed hawks and American kestrels. Since getting his falconry permit in 2004, he's flown Harris hawks, red-tailed hawks, American kestrels, and a red-shouldered hawk. He has served as Southern Director, then Vice President of the Texas Hawking Association, and has published falconry articles in various falconry magazines. So please welcome to the screen, Chuck Reddy.
Good morning. This is a little different format than I've ever done. I've done a million of these talks to Boy Scouts and high schools and so on. What I'm going to do this morning, by the way, Alexis just took my entire presentation speech, so I won't say anything going forward. Let me set this. First of all, let me show you something here. I'm going to share. I'm going to play a few video clips, and then I'm going to run through a quick presentation, and then I'm going to bring the hawks out, and we'll do some Q&A if folks are interested. So I fooled with the technical aspects yesterday, and Abhishek helped me this morning. So let's give it a try here. What do I want to share? An application. And here you'll see, this is my refrigerator. And it, believe it or not, little free advertisement for Sharita. That's been on my refrigerator for the last 2 years or whatever it was she was in when she was singing. First, I'm going to show you, this was my favorite video right here. I spent 30 minutes removing a whole bunch of expletives in the middle of it because this is whoa, hold it, stop. Not quite ready. In the middle of it, I started swearing profusely. But anyway, I was going to make this video and show it to my friends and brag about how my red-tailed hawk would bring prey back to me. By the way, we have a pretty good sized group here. This is a blood sport. If people are offended by hunting, it's not gory, but there are going to be a few animals in this thing. So I apologize. It is organic if it's not, but it's still a blood sport. But watch this video. This is my favorite video of all time, at least the ones that I've taken.
Come here, buddy. A Labrador red-tail. Come here, buddy. Hey, Cisco. Come here, buddy. Hey, bring it over here. Good boy. Come on, fetch. Come on. Come on. Bring it here, buddy. Come on. Come on. Good boy. Good boy. Bring it here. Hey, look. Cisco, right here. Look. Come on, buddy. Fetch. Be a good boy. Hey. Cisco, hey. Hey. No, Arnie. No. This is just, come here. Arnie. No, Arnie. Cisco, come here. There we go. Good boy. Good boy. Arnie. Cisco, come on. Oh, no. Arnie. God. Arnie stole Cisco's food. That could be a bad thing now.
Can everyone hear me okay? Uh-oh.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Good. I'm not a whiz with this. I'll show you a couple of other little clips. I mean, I'll show you the only clip that I have. If I can get it here. Now I'm having trouble with my screen. There we go. This is the only clip I've ever taken of my hawk catching a squirrel. So if you like squirrels, I'm sorry. It's right in the middle of the screen. Whoop. That's it. Okay, and then if anyone is interested in seeing why we got kicked out of Eddie's dance hall a couple of years ago, I'll play the next clip. Is anybody interested in that?
Go for it.
Okay. This was the last Oasis falconry presentation I did. So how's that? Good? So that's why we had to move to other venues. Let's see. I don't know. This is sort of a cute little video. This is, whoa, sorry. This little post. I think I'm just about to trade him off. Look at that, Cisco patiently waiting for that squirrel. Arnie, get out of here. Get a guy. Sorry. Arnie tried to steal Cisco's breakfast. This little post. I think. Okay, here's a picture, a little video. This is what it looks like when I release him to go hunt. Is this okay so far?
Yes, good.
That's my red-tailed hawk, Cisco. Alrighty, let's see. Maybe just one more here. This is just a quick one. This is after a hunt before COVID, last Christmas, actually. This is kind of how it looks.
Rather quick squirrel today.
Okay, stop sharing. I'm going to briefly stop sharing. Oop, everything good? Is anybody offended by squirrels and rabbits and things? I'm serious. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
we can.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go back to screen sharing. And I'm going to run through this presentation. And then I guess we'll take a break, and then I'll do Q&A, and I'll bring the hawks out and all that stuff. So application, here we go again. Let's try this. And this time we'll try present. Can Abhishek, can you see this all right?
Yes, we can see good.
Okay, good. Well, that's my red-tailed Cisco there. And I have a little thing. Hold on a second here. See if I can get it to work. It's my clicker. Just a second. There we go. Okay. If anyone is interested, I have a website. That's at chucksfalconry.com. As Alexis mentioned, I've been dabbling around with this stuff for years. That was actually not even my first red-tailed hawk, and that was in 1966. That was up in northern Illinois. I took that hawk out of a nest that was less than a half mile from my house. Whoops. Backward, excuse me. Anyway, my current red-tailed hawk, Cisco, I've now had for 15 years, pushing 60. He's 16 years old. I trapped him up in Fort Worth in 2005, and you'll see him. He doesn't look, he's petrified in this picture. I mean, imagine you weigh 2 pounds and a giant ogre comes and picks you up and carries you off. That's pretty much how they feel at this moment. But they figure it out in a hurry. Once you start feeding them, they get pretty happy. That's my other hawk. You'll see her, Farah. I've had her for 10 years. She was given to me by a falconer up in Crockett. There's Cisco again. A friend of mine, Mike Weigel, who some of you have met, he came to my last presentation. That's his Peregrine falcon. This is a hawk that we carried from Utah all the way down to Texas to give to a guy. Mike was with me. We went to the national meet up in Utah, and Mike ended up with this hawk after about 10 years, which was kind of funny. And there's Cisco and Arnold, my dog. And the reason I do this presentation is they're pretty amazing things about these hawks. Their eyesight is truly 8 times better than excellent human eyesight. It's not only just binocular type of vision, but they have a second fovea in each eye, which means they can look at two things at once. And plus the density of their retinal cells is about 5 or 6 or 7 times greater, which increases the crispness of their what do you call it? Their vision. Big word there. Yep, there we go. They're very long-lived, but it's such a rough world that they live in that 2/3 of them don't even survive their first year. Females are larger than males. That's something that seems to surprise people, but that's across all the raptors, including owls, which had a whole different evolutionary path. Oops, overshot. The fastest recorded animal in the world is a peregrine falcon. There's a guy in California. He's a falconer, a pilot, and a skydiver. And his peregrine falcon, he clocked at 243 miles an hour, which is not even their theoretical highest speed. Red-tailed hawks can eat a lot of rodents. And Harris hawks, you'll see my Harris hawk, they are one of the very few, what's the word, communal, social raptors. And they live like wolf packs in the wild. And there's a big, huge population of them in South Texas. If you draw a line from the 2 Texas borders, with Laredo being the center, that's probably where most wild Harris hawks in the United States live. Difference between hawks and falcons. I get this question so much that I'm going to run through really fast. So falcons all fall into the genus Falco. And they have slim bodies, dark eyes, and they tend to have a mailer stripe, a dark stripe below the eye. And I'll show you the pictures. There's a peregrine. They not only have a stripe, but they have an entire cap. Oops, this thing is very sensitive, sorry. That's an American Kestrel. That's a true falcon, but they're actually the size of a thrush or a blue jay. They're a tiny little hawk. I keep doing this, I apologize. There's a gyr falcon. This is the largest of all falcons, and in level flight, almost certainly the fastest falcon there is. The true hawks, okay, when somebody says a hawk, a true hawk is in the genus Accipiter. And they look like this. That's a goshawk. These goshawks basically fed most of Europe with small game during the Middle Ages. They're not as big as a red-tail, but they're a pretty large hawk and a terrifically athletic bird as well. This is the Cooper's hawk. They're all over Houston. If there's some bird catching birds in your backyard, it's almost certainly a Cooper's hawk. I see them almost every day here in Houston. This is a sharp-shinned hawk. This is a tiny little hawk, again, more like the females are bigger than an American kestrel, and the males are smaller than an American kestrel. So this is, again, the size of a robin, maybe, on average. And these are all true hawks. And you can see how they look different than the falcons. And it's not obvious when you just see them out there, the difference. And I'm ignoring the 2 most popular falconry birds in the United States. And they're actually fall into this group I call them buzzard hawks. They're buteo hawks. And in the last 50 years, these 2 hawks have just dominated falconry in the United States. And there's my Harris hawk with a rabbit. And she caught out, this is out west of Katy. You'll meet her in a little bit. And there's Cisco, the red-tail with a squirrel. I only hunt squirrels with him these days. The rabbits around Houston have pretty much disappeared. And the Harris hawk is good at catching squirrels, but she also gets bitten so much that I don't usually put her on them. And this is just, in the United States, these are the 3 most popular falconry birds in order. If you go to a falconry meet, probably 40% of the hawks you see there will be red-tailed hawks, and then a smaller chunk of Harris's hawks, and then peregrine falcons and some of the hybrids. I'll be through this stuff pretty soon. This is about as technical as I get. And I'm not even going to do this slide. telemetry. Every hawk that I fly them with a little radio attached. And I'm going to leave this up for a minute. And if any of those questions are good for later, keep them in mind. And if you have your own questions, we can ask. And so if we want to take a break, we can. If we want to have a few questions right now, I'll get rid of this screen. Abhishek, your call.
I'm good with going ahead and doing a couple questions now if we want to do that.
Okay. Should I grab a hawk? Let me.
Would it be easier for Would it be easier for you for us to take a break?
It makes no real difference, Alexis. I'll gladly. Let me get one of my hawks right now, and then you can make up these questions in the meantime. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, actually, we ended up with a break, which I hadn't anticipated. But anyway, yeah, this Cisco. He hates any kind of technology, so it's he may be real uneasy. He hates televisions and light bulbs, and if I change a light bulb on the other side of the yard, he'll start whistling in irritation. So the other hawk will sit here more happily. So any questions right now before we take our break?
Yes, Richard had a question.
Yes, sir, Richard.
Yeah, I like the "will he peck your eyes out" question.
It's that's on there because I hear that, especially if I give talks to Boy Scouts and things. So I just put it up there. And no, they don't. I mean, I'm not really concerned about these guys. They're not much for pecking. I once rescued a heron from my Harris hawk, and I've been doing this long enough, I should know better. And that rascal almost took my eye out, that heron that I rescued. But these guys, they're not much for pecking. Falcons can bite in a serious way, but they don't go for your eyes.
Awesome. Anne on Facebook asked if you are in the Houston area.
I am. I'm in West Houston, and I forgot to mention this. Anybody who would like to come out is welcome. During the winter time, starting around October, I hunt nearly every day. And I'm out there 5 or 6 mornings a week. And if people can't do it in the morning, I can usually shift it. So.
Well, that makes me ask the question. Susan has a question. I see you, and I saw that you posted a question in the chat. So I'm gonna. You'll be next, Susan. Why do you hunt every day in the winter?
Because during the summer they're molting. They're changing their feathers. That starts around April and kind of goes to about October. And in general, because with falconry birds you hunt larger prey. You don't want to damage their feathers. And with this guy, I used to hunt swamp rabbits, which outweigh this hawk by 2 to 3 times. So you're not going to hunt them in the summer because they have very little blood in their system, and a broken feather can actually be a fatality. It isn't usually, but it can be. I feed them in the summer, mostly what they catch in the winter. This guy catches 20 to 30 squirrels each year. And so they go in the freezer. When I was catching rabbits, I had so much food during the summer that I was giving rabbits to other falconers who weren't doing quite as well as I was. I'm reading chat questions.
All right, Susan, I'm asking for, there you go.
Okay. Chuck.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, good morning. What was the bird that I sent you the photo of yesterday across the street from my house? That
looked like a red tail to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and you said he might be a snack for my hawk.
Yeah.
I've twice had resident red tails push this guy to where he was hiding in the bushes from him. So, yeah, he hates this technology.
All right, another question from Terry and Ken. Do Harris Hawks get their cast tie? Oh. Do Harris Hawks get to cast the tiebreaker and vote for Falcon Congress?
Usually because they hang around in groups, they just boss everybody around.
All right. I'm going to combine these next two questions from Eric and Karen. Where do the birds usually stay, and how big are their living quarters?
Okay, during the day, I have two enclosures in my backyard. One of them's 10 by 10. I put the Harris hawk in there because it's away from the fence, and she tends to overreact to weed eaters and things from my neighbors. This guy stays in a 4 by 8 dog kennel that's right against the fence, and this guy flies around loose in his enclosure, and then I tether the Harris hawk in her enclosure. So, and then at night I put him in, and this guy stays in a box that's relatively small with a perch on it. It's his favorite spot on the planet, and that's where he goes when I go hunting. He rides out there in the box. He rides back in the box. He sleeps there at night. Anytime he feels stressed, he wants to go into his box. So.
Next question from Natalie. Do I need to worry about my small white dog who weighs about 18 pounds? There are plenty of hawks in our neighborhood.
That's something I see on Nextdoor all the time. I have kind of a stock response. This hawk right here is a red-tailed hawk. It's one of the most powerful hawks that we have in the United States. This guy weighs 2 pounds. He can carry about a pound if on a good day. When he catches a squirrel up in a tree and he flies out of a tree, the squirrel brings him to the ground within about 40 or 50 yards. So certainly a hawk will not carry that dog away. And though it does happen, just like great white shark attacks happen in La Jolla Beach, California, it's almost never happens. The hawks typically do not attack pets. But it does happen. I'm not going to lie and say it never, ever happens. I would not worry, especially about an 18-pound dog. If you had a teacup poodle and he ran around in your yard all the time, I would worry about that. You know, a teacup poodle, they do fit at a teacup. So, and a hawk would probably like to eat that. Of course, so would a mockingbird.
All right. Another question. Why do the hawks want to hunt with the falconer? What does one do for the other?
Well, we feed them. And Harris hawk, they look at you as a hunting partner. You scare up game. And they're very smart. They figure out the minute that you feed these guys, they go from being terrified to thinking you're all right. And it's funny how they look at you at the moment that you entice them to eat something. You're missing. Let me move this over so you can see him better. I know, I'm sorry, buddy. But they look at you as a hunting partner. Once you get them trained and so on, they know how to hunt, but it's getting them to hunt with you. This guy hunts with my dog all the time. And he looks at me and the dog as their partner. The dog flushes squirrels, so he always keeps an eye on the dog. And if he doesn't catch anything, he knows I'll feed him when I'm done. And he does like to socialize with me a little bit, but red tails are not all that social generally.
Awesome.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. All right. So why don't we go ahead and take a little break, and we can let this one get away from all the technology.
Yeah.
He seems ready to.
Oh yeah, he's had enough. Yeah.
So we can take a break, do breakout sessions, and then we can come back for a little bit more Q&A if there are any more questions that come up, and we'll go from there. And if you're on joining us on Facebook Live, I do see one question over there. I'll get you that information of how to get in touch with Chuck. But if you have any other questions, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, this is a great time to put your questions in the chat, and I can get them over here to Chuck. So with that, we'll go ahead and do some breakout sessions. Great. Welcome back. All right, we had one question from Susan. over the break who wanted to ask Chuck about his how you get registered and licensed to do falconry.
Basically, the best approach is to join Texas Hawking Association, start kind of networking with people there. I know it's difficult these days. You have to have a sponsor for 2 years, and he kind of oversees your falconry activity. And once you kind of pass muster, he'll write a letter to the state, and you can get your general falconry permit. You get an apprentice permit when you get a sponsor and you trap your first hawk. So it used to be we had 2 permits, but the feds got out of it, turned it over to the states, which is a little bit easier. So it's basically, you'll have a game warden from Texas Parks come out to your house and inspect your facilities and look at your equipment. You have to take a test. Not an easy test. Since I had done this 50 years ago, I was all cocky, and I went in there and started taking that test, and about halfway through I thought, I wonder when they'll let me take this test again. I wasn't sure I was going to pass it. I did. So yes, it's extremely illegal to be a falconer without the permit. Just having a hawk like this is on the book something like a $10,000 fine without a permit. I'm supposed to be reading these chats, aren't I?
No, we usually, some people do read it in the chats, but we usually ask you, that way you can just focus on answering the question.
Oh, okay.
Will the hawk ever lead you to wants to have flushed out like a honey guide?
I'm sorry, say one more time.
Sorry. Will the hawk ever lead you to prey that it wants to have flushed out like a honey guide? Oh,
yes. Yeah, once they'll chase something put in sometimes, especially Harris hawks, because they're social. If something puts in, they'll fly back to you knowing what you're going to do. Redtail will also watch where you are, and they depend on you to flush, but they typically won't come back to have you do it. It's a subtle distinction.
Next question. Well, is it, yeah, you already answered that. Is it illegal to be a falconer without the permit? You said yes. All right. Do we have any other questions? Lou, do you have a question? No? Oh, I thought I saw your hand. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? You should be able to unmute yourself at this point.
Okay, I'll ask a question. Chuck, do you ever eat any of the results of your hunts yourself?
I used to more than I do now. They almost always, for one thing, we're not catching rabbits very much at all these days. I know squirrel is pretty tasty, but I haven't actually eaten one, I think, since high school. So most everything goes into my little game freezer, and the hawks eat them over the summer. I haven't cooked any game that they've caught in a long time. I mean, that was the traditional, that's probably how falconry started, is some caveman was running around and he flushed a goshawk off a rabbit or something, and he took it, and then he started thinking, well, maybe I can work with them. So.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, Chuck, how long have you had your game freezer, and where did you put your rats before that?
I don't know why that's so funny, Ted, but it is.
No, it's just a question, Chuck.
Let's see, if you're interested, I bought the game freezer in 2004 at Sears. Before that, I used to put them on my wife's dresser.
Oh.
That's not true, but it sounds good.
So how big is that freezer? I mean, we're looking at about 10 or 12 cubic foot or a 20 cubic foot freezer. You're looking, that's just how big a supply of dead rats do you have there, Chuck?
I have very few dead rats. They were mostly squirrels and rabbits.
Oh,
They catch cotton rats, which is actually I think that's the reason they go out to the field. They catch the other stuff just to indulge the falconer, but they'd love to just catch cotton rats. It goes for both of my hawks. What's the question? Sorry.
how big a freezer do you need?
Oh, it's one of those little mini freezers.
Oh.
Pretty small. Yeah, it's I don't know, about waist high and a couple of feet across, And I put some stuff in my regular refrigerator, a special. If it's thawed, then I'll put it in there. I used to warn the other occupants of the house to stay out of that particular compartment.
What do you do for veterinary care, or is that ever an issue?
It's absolutely an issue. I have a vet, Dr. Mark Peckham in Bel Air, and he's been a raptor. He used to be the zoo vet at the Houston Zoo, and he's actually my dog vet too. So, but yeah, it's important. They get hurt, they get sick, they get parasites. So, yeah, I wrote a little apprentice manual, and I referred to him in there. And it's one of the things that an apprentice needs to find a good raptor vet. But typically his sponsor will know, or her sponsor will know a good vet. But yes, it's important. My vet has probably treated at least a half dozen ailments of my hawks, mostly parasites.
Got a couple more questions.
Sure.
Do their nests look like in trees?
Big sticky looking things. Red-tailed nests are probably the size of a basketball. The bald eagle nest is about the size of a love seat. And Kestrels, which are those little falcons, they just live in little cavities and boxes and things. They don't build nests. In general, falcons are not much, for building nests. But most the hawks and the buzzards, this is a buzzard-like hawk, they build stick nests. And they're just round, sticky nests. Kind of coarse.
Next question, a rabbit or squirrel sounds like a lot of food for a 2-pound bird. In the wild, does most of the catch get left to scavengers?
No. Yes, in general. But the other thing in the wild, hawks prey on smaller items. Unless it's winter and they're kind of pressed for nutrition, they're not going to be hunting rabbits or large birds. They're going to be hunting. A peregrine falcon can take a good-sized duck, and yet their preference is to take a blue jay, right? And they'll eat the whole thing. So, because the bigger animals present a risk to the hawk. I mean, I've had my red tail. I've had him drag 60 feet to a rose bush and pulled under it by a big swamp rabbit. He went by going about 30 miles an hour on the ground, hanging on to a swamp rabbit, and I had to dig him out of a huge rose bush. And they kick like hell, and they outweigh him by 2 or 3 times. So that's not a typical prey for them unless it's winter. In the summertime, he'd much rather catch mice or small birds or something.
And then I have a question.
Oh.
I don't think you introduced
I-
your guest. Oh, okay. Jeff, you will be next. But yeah, I don't think you
okay.
introduced your guest next to you right now.
Oh, this is Farah. She's a 10-year-old female Harris hawk that a guy gave to me in 2011. He had her up in Crockett, Texas. He trapped her down near Beeville, and a tree fell on his enclosure and crushed the enclosure, and she was trapped inside there. And so he had to kind of dig her out of there. And when he got her out of there, she hated his guts. And actually, she was a pretty good judge of character, as it turned out. But yeah, anyway, he couldn't fly her. So we had a mutual friend, and Charlotte calls me and says, "Are you looking for a female Harris Hawk?" And I said, "Yes." As a matter of fact, she says, "Well, Keith has one. He's about to release her in South Texas." So I called Keith and said, "I will save you hundreds of miles to drive, and I'll take her. And if I can't work with her, I'll take her to Beeville myself." And that's how I got her. And so she's Farrah. I named her Farrah because she's so good looking.
Awesome. All right, Jeff, we'll go ahead and take you for the last question.
Okay, I would write my question in, but I can't do that on my iPad, so I have to do it this way. Anyway, Chuck, I'd like to get some squirrel skins for my cat and make toys out of them. You know, they used to sell those. You know, they would have a plastic ball kind of thing, and they wrap squirrel skin. And my cats would just go crazy. I mean, because of the wildness of the smell, but they stopped selling those.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if sometime back, I mean, after the pandemic is over or something, if you could lay a couple squirrel skins on me.
Yeah, absolutely. I sell them professionally. They're, I don't know, usually $250 a skin, if that's a reasonable price.
Oh, well, they're about $5.
The problem is I chop all this stuff up, and the hawks eat skin and bones and everything else with it. Squirrels are, I mean, squirrels are tough to skin. I mean, probably $250 would be a reasonable price for a squirrel skin. I mean, my hawk, Cisco, catches a lot of them, but the reason he brings them to me is because I'll give him something that's easier to eat. It takes him 30 minutes just to break into a squirrel that he's caught. So they're real tough, and they're real hard to skin. If there's anybody who grew up in the country who's got a better way of doing it than I do, yeah, I just chop them up and give them to the hawk.
Okay.
Yes, Ted, they do eat the squirrel brains. Yes. In fact, that's the red-tail's typical reward is a squirrel head, and he eats everything except what he drops to the ground, which are bits of bone and so on. The dog gobbles them up. The dog waits. The other day, 2 or 3 days ago, the dog ran into him when he was all fired up, and he popped the dog in the head. He has to do that about every year or two to keep the dog to remember, don't run in on me. So.
Speaking of your dog, what kind of dog do you have?
He's a Cairn Terrier mix. He's a little mutt dog, and he's turned into a great squirrel dog, and he and my red tail are good buddies. So this hawk hates him.
All right, and I lied. We have one last question. Do you have any books that you recommend for someone who's interested in the sport?
Yes, if someone is truly interested in the sport, please have them get in touch with me. It's fairly involved. I have an apprentice manual that I'm actually just about to do some printing on it. And in the back, I've got a list of recommended reading.
Awesome. Okay, well,
So,
we might have someone contacting you very soon. She seems interested.
Yeah, okay, great.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. A special thank you to Chuck and Sharita. Tonight, we're going to have another coronavirus conversation back here on Zoom and on Facebook Live with Drs. Richard Andrews and will you be joining tonight? Is he still in there? But we also have a volunteer event coming up at the Houston Food Bank this Wednesday. So please check out either your email or Facebook Live for more details. So with that, keep an eye out for our future emails, Facebook posts, meetup, however you keep in contact with us, and have a great week and stay safe out there.